Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea's main stock index, the KOSPI, rises to a new all-time high, closing above 3,300 points for the first time. A South Korean court rules against Netflix in the dispute over network charges. SK Broadband's been demanding Netflix pay millions in usage fees. And marking the anniversary of the Korean War, Prime Minister Kim Boo-kyung reaffirmed South Korea's determination to bring peace to the Korean Peninsula and to defend itself with its ally, the United States. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. President Moon Jae-in held a virtual summit on Friday morning with the leaders of countries that make up the Central American Integration System, known as SICA. In a joint statement, the leaders agreed to foster comprehensive cooperative ties for a sustainable and inclusive economic recovery. Kim Min-ji reports.
South Korea and 8 Central American states have agreed to work to promote a comprehensive cooperative relationship. President Moon Jae-in on Friday held a virtual summit with leaders of the countries that make up the Central American Integration System, or SICA. SICA, launched in 1991 to promote regional development, brings together 8 countries in Central America, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Guatemala. It was Moon's first multilateral meeting with Central American states since taking office in 2017.
한국과 시카는 코로나 위기 속에서도 방역물품과 경험을 나누며 연대와 협력을 실천했습니다. 그리고 이제 그 협력과 연대의 지평을 더욱 넓히려고 합니다. 한국은 안정된 거버넌스를 구축하여 영내 통합과 지속 가능 경제 발전을 이루려는 시카 회원국들의 노력을 적극 지지합니다.
The leaders agreed to boost practical cooperation, especially in the green and digital sectors, and to address global tasks such as climate change and COVID-19 for sustainable and inclusive economic recovery. During the summit, Moon also expressed hope of boosting cooperation through South Korea's New Deal initiative and said that the South Korea-Central America Free Trade Deal that took effect in March this year is expected to boost regional trade and investment and create jobs. The Central American states welcome Seoul's intent to resume the South Korea-SICA Cooperation Fund, which promotes socio-economic development and regional unity. Moon also vowed to contribute to ensure the fair access to vaccinations for all, including the SICA nations, while the Central American states also expressed support for peace and denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. Friday's meeting was the 4th of its kind, the last one being held in 2010. South Korea became an extra-regional observer of SICA in 2012. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea is also boosting cooperation with Singapore, including on a so-called travel bubble. Seoul's Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong is in Southeast Asia this week and on Thursday paid a courtesy visit to Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. They reaffirmed cooperation on economic issues and trade, including fintech and startups, as well as South Korea's new Southern Policy Plus, a program of diplomacy with ASEAN. Also discussed were cooperation on vaccines, a travel bubble, and resuming the bilateral fast-track entry system, which was suspended a few months ago due to the resurgence of the virus. While in Southeast Asia, Chung also held talks in Jakarta with his Indonesian counterpart, Retno Marsudi, to bolster partnerships in health, economy, and the defense industry. South Korea's prime minister says the country is preparing another push to bring permanent peace to the Korean Peninsula. He was speaking earlier at a ceremony in Busan to mark the 71st anniversary of the start of the Korean War.
South Korea will become stronger to protect peace. We'll keep our peace firmly through the enhanced international status of South Korea and the strong base of the Korea-US alliance.
He also said the government will do its best to show the veterans the appropriate courtesy and provide them with support. He added that Seoul is working to recover the remains of soldiers who died in the war and is taking care of veterans who are in poor health. Today, June 25th, is the 71st anniversary of the start of the Korean War. And to remember those who fought for South Korea's freedom, the Incheon branch of the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs has installed mailboxes to collect thank you letters from the public for those who sacrificed so much. Choi Won-jong files this report.
In the corner of this subway station in Incheon, is a red mailbox. But it's not an ordinary mailbox, rather, it's a box that delivers letters of appreciation for Korean War veterans, as part of a campaign launched in April by South Korea's Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs. These Thanks to Heroes postboxes have been placed at several locations across the city.
We give postcards to someone we care about the most while traveling. I thought that could be a simple way to show our appreciation. And for the mailbox, we chose this because we wanted to be a bridge that connects between veterans and the public.
The letters can be posted in the mailboxes or sent online. More than 10,000 cards in Korean and over 15,000 cards in English have been gathered so far, mostly from schools across the country. One student from the city of Paju said this campaign was something very close to her heart.
My dream is to become a military officer. It was a meaningful event with my friends who had same dreams as me. I even saw some of my friends crying while writing the letters. I felt so grateful.
저는 오늘 대한민국을 지켜주신 모든 분들께 감사의 말씀을 드리기 위해 엽서를 작성하게 되었습니다. 목숨 바쳐 이 나라를 지켜주셔서 진심으로 감사드립니다. 당신의 희생과 헌신을 우리는 잊지 않고 기억하겠습니다.
Those written letters have been sent out to Korean War veterans both in Korea and overseas. The Korean War veteran Ko Young-hee still remembers the day when he received a letter from the students.
I actually received letters a few times. I feel very grateful when I read those thank you cards from students and organizations. I'm deeply touched that these young students know so much about the Korean War and write these letters to us.
As he turns 87 years old this year, he hopes that people just don't forget the sacrifices made for the country.
But the veteran added that what's more important is that remember those fallen soldiers with deep gratitude every year. 최원조, 아리랑 뉴스 인천.
South Korea's main stock index, the KOSPI, has risen to a new all-time high, closing on Friday above 3,300 points for the first time. For the session, the KOSPI rose by about 0.5% to 3,302.8. The surge was in part on news of the Biden administration getting a deal with Congress on its plan to spend another $1 trillion on infrastructure. Korean shares were also boosted by data showing the American economy improving and by new all-time highs Thursday on the S&P and the Nasdaq. A South Korean court ruled Friday against the video streaming service Netflix in a long-running dispute about network usage fees. Internet service provider SK Broadband wants Netflix to pay a network usage fee for the massive amounts of resources it takes up. But the court dismissed Netflix's claim that it owes no money, indicating that it's a matter for the two sides to negotiate. Kim Sang-min reports.
A local court in South Korea on Friday dismissed Netflix claims that it does not have to share the internet network maintenance cost caused by its users. Netflix filed a case with the Seoul Central District Court on April 13 last year, asking it to confirm that it is not liable to compensate SK Broadband for the cost of upgrading and expanding the local company's network for Netflix users. The court held that it is up to the companies to negotiate based on the liberty of contract principle. As for another request, that Netflix holds no responsibility to negotiate with SK Broadband, the court dismissed the claims, saying that they have no standing in court. The dispute was first sparked in 2019 when SK Broadband requested Korea Communications Commission for an arbitration with Netflix over the network usage fee. It claimed that traffic overloads caused by Netflix's high-definition content and rapidly growing number of users have left the company having to spend huge amounts to maintain the high quality of its services. SK Broadband argued that Netflix was free riding on its network and should share the costs associated with the extra traffic it has caused. But the request was turned down by Netflix, who took the case to the court. Netflix argued that under net neutrality, responsibility for maintaining the network falls on the internet service providers. While Netflix is yet to reveal its future plans regarding network usage fee, the next steps could involve negotiating with SK Broadband or appealing the decision.
The implications of the court's decision on Friday are not limited to the local industry, but could also set an important precedent as global video streaming services are increasingly looking to expand into new markets. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
South Korean retailers are offering big bargains right now as part of a nationwide retail event aimed at reviving the economy. Discounts on lots of items from clothes to furniture. Jang Tae-hyun reports.
The Korea fashion market kicked off on Friday, offering clothes at discounts of up to 90%.
And taking part in this event are 14 department stores, 4 online platforms, and 241 brands selling products at affordable prices.
It's attracting customers for South Korean retail giants like Shinsegae, Hyundai, Lotte, and other online sellers.
With more vaccinated people coming out to shop for the summer, retail businesses see this as a great opportunity to sell more of their products.
Because it's so hot, I came out to look for some light and cool clothes. I think I'll get some because it's so cheap here.
This is the third edition of the Korea Fashion Market, and it will be held until July 1st. In the meantime, South Korea on Thursday kicked off another bigger nationwide retail campaign dubbed the Korea Dongheng Sale, which will run until July 11th. The Korean word dongheng means to go along together. And with thousands of retailers taking part across the country, from conglomerates to local stores, it certainly lives up to its name. There are big discounts on home appliances, cars, furniture, food, and more. There's also a 10% discount on gift cards that can be used at around 150 traditional markets nationwide. Jang Tae-hyun, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Friday afternoon. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, good to have you back on today. Thanks for making time.
Good afternoon.
Well, stocks in New York closed higher overnight after the Biden administration says it secured the deal it wants for infrastructure spending. The S&P and the NASDAQ both rising to new all-time highs. Tell us about that infrastructure deal and the action in the markets.
Yes, the blue chip Dow surged more than 300 points, while the S&P 500 as well as tech-heavy NASDAQ notched fresh record highs after the President Joe Biden said that he reached an infrastructure deal with a group of senators. The gains were most pronounced among the value and cyclical shares, which should benefit hugely from the economic recovery. And if you look at the overall Fed approach to the managing U.S. economic rebound, it seems to be actually reviving the high-flying technology stock share prices performance. And we did see the tech shares, the NASDAQ shares, which really didn't do too well at the beginning of this year, now breaking the record high as time goes by. This is due to because of the U.S. interest rate, the 10-year government bond rate remaining at well below 1.5%. A lot of people worry that that rate might rise to well above 2% plus quite quickly, but in fact, it actually have declined from the peak of 1.77% a few months ago. So clearly, the Fed is continuing to provide ample liquidity to the system, and that they expect the economy to do reasonable growth. And this news of the infrastructure deal should benefit the overall economic growth rate. But nevertheless, if you look at the labor market, it remains to be quite dull in a sense that the salary growth rate remains to be only about 2%. And in a longer-term basis, it might take a little bit longer, actually quite a lot of more time for the labor market to normalize to the level of the pre-pandemic era. So if that's the case, then we do think that overall U.S. market, particularly NASDAQ, should do continue to do well, as well as any stocks that are related to this infrastructure deal.
Well, here in Korea, it seems like a similar story today. The KOSPI, too, rising to an all-time high. The KOSPI first crossed 3,000 points back in January. It's carried on through 3,100, 3,200, and now 3,300. Tell us, what's the story in the Korean market?
Yes, we are expecting that KOSPI to reach well above 3,600 level by the end of this year, based on the liquidity condition of M2 versus the market capitalization of Korean market, and also the current interest rate environment, as well as the earnings growth rate that we're seeing due to the strong economic growth rate. Now, the KOSPI as of today reached for the first time of 3,300 level, and ended at 3,302.84. KOSDAQ slightly corrected to 1012, but still above 1,012. Above 1,000 territories. Right now, it seems that the foreign investors are actually coming back to buy the Korean market. Today, for the KOSPI, foreign investors bought about 245 billion won worth of Korean market. Also in KOSDAQ, they bought about 12.2 billion won worth of it. And the institutions are also actually net buyer of KOSPI, with this overall market reaching well above 3,300 territories. All this is because we see that the business survey index of Korea seems to be showing very strong improvement in the manufacturing sector, and that number reached, PSI number reached to 98 in June of 2021 from 96 in the previous month, and it continues to be improving. Overall economic condition seems to be reasonably good, as the overall normalization from the COVID-19 is actually happening. But nevertheless, we still see quite a bit of the new COVID-19 cases of 645, and that it might take a little bit longer period of time for this to be fully normalized in the future. In any case, Korea is very strong in terms of the export numbers, as well as economic growth numbers and earnings growth numbers. So we do think that fundamental as well as liquidity supports the current trend of the KOSPI rising further. As I said, we are expecting KOSPI to reach 3,600 before the end of this year.
Well, you mentioned there for a little bit foreign investors, and linked to that might be the issue of exchange rates, which we've discussed a few times recently, how the won to dollar rate surged up into the 11.30 range for a few weeks, and then today it's back down into the 11.20s. So what do you see happening with the dollar and the won?
Right. As I said earlier, dollar seems to be kind of struggling in a sense that the Fed continues to remain quite dovish. In the recent few weeks or so, we did see dollar strengthening to 92 level plus, but it seems to be kind of declining slightly. Now it's reaching about 91.7 level. And if we think that the Fed continues to remain dovish, and that interest rate remains to be low level, then there's no reason for dollar to strengthen further per se. So this is the reason why we have seen Korean won appreciating quite a bit from the recent depreciation that we did see. It did go up to well above 11.30 territories. Some people said that it might go up to 11.50, but as I said, this might not be actually happening because of the conditions seems to be quite strong for Korea. And Korean won has appreciated to now 11.28 territories. We think that the range bound is expected for Korean won, anywhere between 1100 to 1130. It might go up to 1150. Depends on what happens to the dollar level. But in any case, Korea as well as U.S. are doing well in terms of economic growth rate this year. If you look at these two economies, they're actually a few economy that are growing from the peak of the COVID-19 era. So if you look at the last year, the GDP growth rate of most of the country fell and then start to go up. Now the level of the size of the economy is bigger than what it was before the COVID-19 for both countries. So therefore, we don't see any significant movement against each other in terms of currency-wise. We do think that the range bound should happen between won and US dollars.
And finally, Mr. Yu, the governor of the Bank of Korea, Lee Ju-yeol, is now talking about an interest rate hike within this year. The economy is running very hot right now, and he says he wants an orderly exit from the current monetary easing policy. What do you make of his comments, and what are you expecting in terms of rate hikes?
Right. Bank of Korea have said that. The governor Lee Ju-yeol have said that they're ready to conduct its first post-pandemic rate hike within this year amid the economy is showing quite robust recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. He has hinted that BOK could exit from the pandemic monetary easing if an economic recovery remains to be solid. But it is the first time that he mentioned the timing of a rate hike. I think that he's always been quite a bit of the hawkish type of a person in a sense. And always it's been the case. He seems to be following the trend. But if you look at the current condition as what he says, yes, Korea is doing quite strong recovery versus any other countries. But nevertheless, if you look at Korea, the consumer debt level, it is one of the highest among the major OECD countries at well above 100% debt to GDP ratios. So I don't know whether there will be a move in a case where they could raise interest rate higher and faster per se than U.S. If U.S. is not going to raise interest rate until end of 2023, I don't see there's any major reason why BOK should raise interest rate. If it does, then it will put quite a bit of burden to the consumers of Korea, and that would result into quite a bit of a property market crash per se. If you look at the Korea's consumer debt to GDP ratio is well above 102%, whereas U.S. is only 78%. So clearly, U.S. is much better condition than Korea. So if you raise interest rate, then we think that the default ratios of a lot of the consumer side, the retail side, might rise quite significantly. If that's the case, I think that it will put quite a bit of burden for the overall economic conditions for Korea, even though that the export numbers are very strong. But, as I said, the export doesn't benefit every individual of Korea. It only benefits those companies and the people who work for it. So therefore, we don't see that there's a reason for BOK to be aggressive in terms of the rate hike. So therefore, I don't expect a rate hike to happen anytime this year. If they do so, maybe next year. And foreign investors knows this in a sense that they continue to be a net buyer of Korean market as the market continues to be quite strong. And we did see that the Korean won might be appreciating even more with the export growth rate remaining quite strong. So all in all, yes, BOK government have said that they will raise interest rate. They will be faster than U.S., but I don't think it will be much faster than U.S.
Well, a very interesting perspective. As always, Mr. Yu, we appreciate you sharing that with us. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.